If you've watched the channel for any amount of time, you'll know that I love animals, you'll know that I love welfare, and you'll know that I love lighting. But did you know that there's something else I also love? Something that I've been keeping secret from you? I'm a little bit of a nerd when it comes to disinfectants. And it's not that I'm a clean freak. One quick look at my desk and you'll see that that's not the case. I just really like the science, the chemistry and the biology of the concept of disinfecting, sterilizing, biocides. Yeah, I know, I'm weird. Let's do a quick deep dive into this subject, even if it's just for my sake. If you follow me on my other socials, you'll know that there's basically two disinfectant products that I use and recommend for everything, and that's Safe4 and Leucillin. It's worth me mentioning that I'm not paid to promote any of these products by any of these brands. I've never had freebies from either of them, and I pay full retail price for everything that I own from either brand, except for that one time when I won a box of Safe4 on a Christmas charity raffle. But other than that, everything else has been full retail price paid for by myself out of my own pocket. So you can rest assured that everything I'm about to say is true and from myself. It's not an advertisement, it's not sponsored, and it's not gifted. But Tom, I hear you cry. Why these two products? Why not F10 or any of the thousands of other products that happen to be on the market for this sort of purpose? And my reasoning behind that is actually multifold. For starters, nearly every single zoo conference or reptile conference I've ever been to has been sponsored in some way by Safe4. And for exotic animal keepers, community is important. So to buy products from a company that doesn't support the community seems backwards to me. I'd rather put money back into a company that supports the community that I'm a part of. Alan, the director of Safe4, is actually a bit of an inspiration. He's always on call for zoos and is often a first line of contact for zoos when there is a disease outbreak, or any biohazard for that matter. And despite his company, Safe4, being really big, it's still him that shows up to the conferences to represent his product and his brand. And he offers free advice to animal keepers at those conferences. And he's really knowledgeable about DEFRA, which brings me onto my second point. Safe4 is DEFRA approved. This means it's passed DEFRA's quite stringent tests for efficacy against certain diseases. And F10, for example, is not DEFRA approved. Now, F10 used to be DEFRA approved, and they released a statement on the matter, saying that they pulled out because of safety concerns. What they failed to mention in their statement is that in June 2024, the PT3 legislation changed for the Article 95 approved ingredients, and the F10 surface disinfectant products include an ingredient that is no longer approved. This ingredient that the F10 disinfectant range contains is considered to be a carcinogen, and because of that, the provider of this ingredient is no longer on the active substance approval list, which means that the product is no longer on the Article 95 approval list for disinfectant products. So had they not pulled out by themselves, F10's surface disinfectant range would have been forced to be removed by this change in legislation. So the F10 surface disinfectants contain a product that is a carcinogen, and they aren't DEFRA approved. So it's really not something I can see myself recommending to clients and customers. And certainly not something I can see myself using myself when I regularly need a disinfectant product. It's actually written into UK legislation that if there's an outbreak of a certain disease, such as avian influenza, then animal relevant businesses must use a DEFRA approved disinfectant, and at the approved dilution ratio. So F10 is simply off the list. If you're a business and there's an outbreak of a listed disease, you cannot use F10, or many of the other products that are not on the list. The third thing I want to consider is COSH. And if you work in any professional environment, be that a breeding facility, a pet shop, a zoo, then you should know all about COSH and HSE. And for a product to pass as UK REACH compliant, there must be data sheets available for that product. And with all of Safe4's products, those clear data sheets are on the website, easily accessible for all customers. Meanwhile, plenty of the off-the-shelf products quite simply don't have those sheets available, at least not that I can find on the website. And that's not UK REACH compliant. That means you shouldn't be using them in the workplace, be that a pet store or a zoo, or indeed any breeding that you're doing for work. And the fourth major thing is contact times. I want something that does the job and does that job relatively quickly. Far too many people, including most pet shops I've been to, use these products incorrectly. They grab the ready-to-use bottles, they spray it on something, wipe it, and walk away. And I see that a lot with the F10 diluted range. Let me be clear. Spraying and wiping away will not disinfect a surface. For example, if you want to kill an envelope virus and you use something like the F10 super concentrate, then you'll need to dilute it to the approved ratio and spray it on the surface and wait 15 minutes. That means the surface must stay wet and totally wet for those 15 minutes. Compare that to Safe4, and at the approved dilution ratio, it's only 5 minutes of wet time. So if I take into consideration the community support, the DEFRA approval, the UK REACH compliance, the safety, the contact times, then the only answer for me for a surface disinfectant is Safe 4, and that's why it's the only one that I recommend to private clients and zoo clients. Now, that's not to say that products like F10 don't work. F10 definitely works as a hard surface disinfectant, as long as you're using it within the dilution ratios and the contact times stated on the bottle, and that the surface has been pre-cleaned and rinsed with an approved soap first. Similarly, the other ready-to-use disinfectants will almost certainly work as well if you use them to their approved ratios, and in line with their test standards. That is, if they give you any guidance on the bottle or the website at all. Some of them don't. It's worth me saying that F10 recently put out a statement in the form of a pop-up on their website, confirming that they are remaining on the UK market in 2025 whilst an unnamed competitor is making false claims about them. I haven't personally seen anything of this nature, but I would be interested to see where this claim has come from. And to give F10 some credit where it's due, they have some really good surface disinfectants that come with added surfactants, the XD range. That's for added cleaning power, although they do need to be rinsed away. And something that I do think is really nice is a hand moisturizer with disinfectant included. They also have a line of veterinary licensed products, and these are things that can be used by vets in specific situations under specific care. The issue here is that the F10 surface disinfectant doesn't meet my criteria for recommending it to clients in pet shops and zoos. I mean, when was the last time you saw F10 sponsoring a conference? And before I end the section on Safe 4, I do want to mention that they manufacture for another brand in the UK of veterinary disinfectants. That's National Veterinary Services, and their line of disinfectants called Select. So anything I say about Safe 4 applies to that as well. So if Safe 4 is so good, why do I also recommend Leucillin? And before I get into that, please don't forget that this video content stuff is just a bit of a side project of mine. I don't use these videos to generate any income, and they're more to be used as a point of reference for me to send people to when they ask me questions. But if you hear off your own back, then wow. I want to say thank you so much for finding the video and taking the time to watch. Don't forget to check out the real work I do on the website. The brand Damascus is an animal husbandry, welfare and lighting consultancy. And I work with zoos, vets, private keepers, stores, all around the world to try and put into practice the stuff that I talk about. I'm in a unique position to help in those settings because I'm also a research and development consultant for the manufacturing of the very products that I talk about. The same lights that we use in our homes to light our bearded dragons and in zoos to light zebras. And in my spare time, I test off-the-shelf products, and that's to give you, the buyer, some independent information about the idea of the products themselves. And those tests are paid for out of my own pocket primarily, as well as the kind donations of people like you. You can head to www.damascus.co.uk/donate to find out more information. It's of course zero obligation and the information will always be free, but it does just help to get that information out to the masses to receive kind donations from others. Okay, so onto Leucillin. Leucillin is actually a different kind of product to Safe 4. It's usually something you would spray onto an animal rather than onto the environment that an animal lives. And Leucillin's active ingredient is 350 ppm of hypochlorous acid. Now, hypochlorous acid is like a cleaning nerd's wet dream. It's a slightly acidic mixture of water and chlorine. And in every sense of the word, it's perfectly safe for you and most animals. Although I wouldn't use it on any animals that are sensitive to sodium salt, so slugs or snails. Hypochlorous acid is used in the horticulture industry to clean veg. It's used in a veterinary setting to clean wounds. It's used in dentistry, orthopedics, ENT, eye health, all sorts. In fact, it's been found to aid in healing with a near instant kill on many pathogens. We're talking a contact time of a few seconds. And for that then to also be safe to spray on wounds, eyes, ears, mouth, vents, that's a heck of a product. And hypochlorous acid is available from a range of different brands. I just opt for Leucillin because it's so readily available. Amazon stocks it in the UK and in the US. And in the UK, it's also available from the big chain pet store like Pets at Home. So why not use Leucillin as a surface disinfectant? And that's actually a really good point. And in theory, you could. It would certainly work on many surfaces. You just have to be careful not to spray it onto metal surfaces. Any high school chemistry will tell you that metals don't really mix well with acids. It's simply not cost effective to use this as a spray for all of your surfaces in your home, facility and enclosures. And the primary issue is that the longevity of hypochlorous acid on a surface isn't great. You could spray a surface down with Leucillin and kill all the bacteria and the pathogens. But then a few moments later, once it's all dried, bacteria can regrow on that surface very easily. There isn't any long-lasting effect of hypochlorous acid on the surface, the same way there is with the active ingredients in Safe 4. You can spray Safe 4, do the dwell time. After it's all dried away, it will continue to repel pathogens for a long time. Leucillin doesn't do that. Quite simply, Leucillin is much more appropriate as an acute instant disinfectant, rather than, say, a maintenance product. And on my criteria list from earlier, Leucillin also scores pretty high. It's easy to use, you just spray it and leave. It's absolutely safe for you, your home, and most of your animals. That is, it won't burn or stain or bleach or do any damage to skin or eyes. Because of the active ingredient, the hypochlorous acid, it doesn't need to be COSH registered. That's a really big deal if you're a pet store or a zoo. And because it also isn't technically a biocide, it doesn't need DEFRA approval. The big downside from my criteria list is that I just don't see Leucillin anywhere. I wish they supported conferences like the AHH BHS conference that we hold every year at Drayton Manor, or got involved more with selling the product in specialist pet shops. In fact, That holds true for both Safe 4 and Leucillin. I think their biggest downfall is that people just don't know they exist. In the zoo and aquarium world, Safe 4 is a huge name, but I'd never see it on the shelves of my local specialist pet stores. Which is weird because Safe 4 does sell these ready-to-use bottles that would work perfectly in a retail setting. And specifically, if Safe 4 made a moisturizer in the signature scents that they do, I would bite their hand off at that. And I've certainly not tried making my own. Definitely not. I do wonder how much interest there would be in these products if they were available at pet stores, and if people asked their pet stores to stock them. But I suppose that's up to the pet world and the industry to catch up with the zoo world. I suppose the real question is, how much of those specialist pet shops where Mr. and Mrs. Pet Store owner are trying to sell you a product like F10 are just doing it because that's what's available from the wholesaler? Do they actually know anything about DEFRA approval, COSH, dilution ratios, or contact times? Or are they just selling you what they're told to sell you by the wholesalers? I suppose that's a question for another day as to whether specialist pet stores are actually specialists. On the note of the wholesalers, here's a message for the two main wholesalers, Monkfield Nutrition and Peregrine Life Foods in the UK. Please do your best to stock these two products. Get in touch with Leucillin, get in touch with Safe 4, and see if you can provide a way of wholesaling these products to pet stores. Equally, if that doesn't happen and you're a pet store, get in touch with Leucillin and Safe 4. They have methods of stocking their products direct without having to go through a wholesaler. All you need to do is ask. To summarise, I have every genuine belief that welfare and general care practices will improve if people use these products, and that can only be a positive thing. Let me know what you think. Would you buy these products if they were on the shelf in your local pet store? Do you think stores should be using DEFRA-approved disinfectants? Chuck us a thumbs up or a thumbs down, leave us a comment with a question, all that good stuff. And please, don't forget, you can subscribe, you can share the video, and you can head to www.damascus.co.uk to see some of the real work we get up to, rather than just speaking to a camera. So on that note, thanks for sticking around, thanks for watching, and I will see you when I see you.